All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I already did.
Oh.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Hoosier Main. I'm Jared, and this is my co-host.
Hey, how's it going? This is Anthony.
Tonight, it's Thursday. We're going to be talking about some remakes and remasters again. Something just came to light. By the time you're listening to this, I don't know when you'll be listening to this, but the Oblivion Remaster came out very recently, and everybody's ranting and raving about it. And it sparked some conversations with me and Anthony here. And, well, I don't know. We've got a lot to say about this topic always. Remakes and remasters are something that you and I are both very passionate about, I think.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we were talking about is the importance of bringing these old master games. They're master crafted. They're legacy legends. They're like the great books that were written prior to video games, like Lord of the Rings or something. Well, you just have to read it. This is a book you have to read. Sorry. This is a game that you have to play. Oblivion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I still think neither one of us own it. We've watched other people play it for us. It's exactly how we remember it. You know, we were talking before we got started here where a lot of the things that we love about those games are the nostalgia and the jank of it almost. You know, you can bring something into the modern standard with mods if you're playing on PC. This was almost a surprise. It came out of nowhere where they just kind of released it, kind of brought the game to the forefront. You're exactly right. Yeah, I think that's what we've been trying to champion here is just make games accessible to a new audience. You know, not everybody has an Xbox 360, a PlayStation 3. Not everybody has the wherewithal or the time or the know-how to put mods together and make those old games as presentable as that would be with the remake. You know, the remake looks gorgeous. Could you get that way with mods? Probably not, but you know, I love it. I'm all for it.
I can definitively say no. Oblivion cannot become magically Unreal Engine 5'd. The modders have done great work with the traditional game. And normally I don't say this that I don't like original Oblivion graphics. I don't really care for them. I was there when it came out, Leo, but it just wasn't my jam. I played it a lot. Everything's ugly in that game, and I like that. And I like how they handled the graphics in the character stylizations in the remaster. I think they're still kind of ugly. I like that. I do. I like that about that game. I like that nobody's fuckable. You know, it's real.
Those Bethesda games have always been almost like a full generation behind other games. Laughably so. You know, that's why the modding community has been so strong and been so adamant about changing those games. And you're right. I was never an Oblivion guy. I always, you know, if I had my pick, I would rather take Fallout 3 than I would, or Fallout New Vegas, especially, over Oblivion. But, you know, obviously going back to it and seeing some of the dialogue, and like you said, there's just this charm about it where something can be so bad that it becomes good. And I think that's a lot of the case with that game, where it's just so fun to play.
It's an experience playing the Elder Scrolls games. The Elder Scrolls games are some of the most important games I think made. They're just very good. And playing the original games is very good. But there's no reason. I just can't believe I'm saying this after watching people play it. And I mean, for hours I've been watching my buddy Zero play it, and it's really fun to watch him play. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think there's any reason to go back and play the original Oblivion game. And that is not something that I ever think about a remaster or a remake. I'm always like, yeah, like take Pokemon, for example. I'm like, go back and play the original Pokemon game. It is amazing. It is fun. The graphics are amazing. I think, personally, I love those old 8-bit graphics. They're amazing. And then you can play Red and Blue. Then you can play Yellow. Technically, that's a remake of Red and Blue. And then there's Leaf Green and Fire Red. And then there's the Let's Go games. And I'm like, each one of those is like its own thing. But I'm sitting there watching Oblivion Remaster, and I'm like, man, you could just play this. What the hell? What the hell? That's not, I don't think that's a common thing in this topic.
Absolutely. And you're right. I think there are certain games that you have to play. I think those are the gold standard. Those are the things that other games try to emulate and copy. And so it's important to play the original to see where, gaming landscape was molded, was shifted. I don't think Oblivion shook any mountains or, did anything that was groundbreaking. I think it's a really fun game. And, like you said, I think it's fun to watch other people play and see what they do. I just end up always playing a stealth archer in those games. So for me, it's like, here we go again. I'm just playing the same character with a different skin. So yeah, I agree with that assessment. I think you could take it or leave it. I think it was more about the shock value of them kind of announcing it and then it coming out almost immediately after, especially because Bethesda has been very quiet since they've announced their, eventual release of Elder Scrolls 6. And gosh, whenever Fallout comes out again, probably when we're dead, it's going to be another 60 years before we get another Fallout game. But so for them to just kind of drop a game, yeah, I think that was almost more of the surprise of it all.
Yeah, the shadow drop was insane. This piece that we're doing here is obviously it's not coming out right when this information all was privy, but yeah, it was just interesting. I mean, remasters and remakes in general, I get very excited about. I like going back to the classic games and playing them over again. I've become more of a retro gamer than a modern gamer nowadays. Maybe it's just the retreat into something that I know with the few moments that I have after the kids go to bed or whatever. If that's what motivates me, I don't know.
The thing that is so great about them, obviously the allure of them is it's so difficult to play games on older consoles. Even if a console has backwards compatibility, a lot of times it's limited to one generation back. And so if the game you want to play is maybe for something that isn't compatible with HDMI, especially, so we're talking retro games, being able to play it on a modern console, that's huge. And if you can play it on PC, even better, that's even better. But a lot of the reason I think remakes happen is because you want to experience that, but there's no way to play it. And so it gets ported up into this next generation, gets brought into the HD or, sometimes even advanced further beyond that. And I love it. You're right. I think that's a great way to introduce those games to a new audience, to people who want to experience those games again. That's normally the boat that I'm in as well, where I want to play an old game. And rather than, breaking out the old hardware and the old games, well, I'll just take the remaster and I'll just play it on a console that I've already got plugged in.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things you harp and talk about constantly, playing a game on original hardware. I mean, what more can you ask for when they do this kind of thing? I love this. I was deathly ill when they shadow dropped Oblivion, and so I was in my death bed with my Switch. You got to have your sick game. My sick game was the Mario RPG remaster. So I'm just like laying there playing this old game, and then this old game gets released, and I'm like, what are these old games? I'm playing all these old games. Like, what the hell's going on? What year is it? Did I die and go to heaven? These are the best games ever made.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think if you can, I would always recommend playing games on original hardware. I think to me that is the thing that I have championed as like my thing. I'm the same boat as you, where I'm the family librarian. I keep all of the old consoles and all of the old games and all of that stuff. And I get it. We live in a modern age and everything is digital now. Everything is streamed. And it's so easy to just click a button, download the game. It takes up no physical space. It's literally just a limitation of how fast your internet is. I get it. But I think there's something magical about, popping a cartridge into a console, or like you said, you're playing a handheld game, holding the original handheld and putting that thing, the cartridge in the back or the disc in the back, whatever it may be, and playing that game the way it was meant to be played. You just can't beat that, man. That's what it's all about for me. That's what video games are all about for me. But I understand that's not for everyone. And so this is kind of where I think remasters fill that void, where it's kind of a happy medium between the two, and you can kind of have the best of both worlds.
When did Oblivion come out originally?
It would have been the PS3, Xbox 360 era, so 2000, early 2000s.
No, wait a minute. 2006.
There you go.
The Mario RPG that I've been playing, that was a Super Nintendo game, not a handheld. But I'm playing it in a handheld, and you're going to love this. I have the physical version of it.
Look at that. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I want my kids to be able to pull the old dusty Switch out of my storage when I'm dead and be like, oh, man, what's this old game? And plug it in and be like, wow, it still works. I'm not the librarian for the Super Nintendo in my household, so I don't have the original game. So it was a nice way to get it again, and have it without having to track down a Super Nintendo and track down the Super Nintendo version, which I love. Well, another great thing is you can play both on the Switch right now. Nintendo's got the digital Super Nintendo, and you can play the original. I think both have their strengths. I don't think the definitive way to play Mario RPG is the new one. I think you can play both, and you should. If you like one, you should play the other. That's usually how I feel about these kind of things. We kind of got a little list here of remasters. Of course, we've already talked about remasters and remakes before. I know a little bit. This is a little more in depth. I think you're playing a remaster right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm currently playing a remaster of The Last of Us, and that is a game that originally came out on the PlayStation 3. I love zombie games, and this has recently gotten a little bit more popular in mainstream media because of the show that's just come out. And so it's been remade. It was originally remade on the PlayStation 4. It got remade again on the PlayStation 5. And then it got remade again, or it's in the process of getting remade again as a collection of Part 1 and Part 2. And so in total, it will have been remade 4 times. I love that game. I love the series. I love the world that they created with that. It's just something where I think they do such a good job of making the game about characters. It's a zombie game, but it's much more about the characters that you're playing. And the story is very cliche. It's something that's been told 1,000 times before. Spoiler alert, Ellie, the girl, the main character, protagonist, whatever you want to call her, she's immune. Her mother was bitten while she was pregnant, and then she delivered Ellie, and Ellie came out immune. She finds out by getting bitten, and she doesn't turn. And so the game is the process of taking her from one side of the country to the other so that she can be taken to kind of this last bastion of hope for humanity, where they're going to find a cure, and they're going to use her blood to find a cure and turn back the tide and make humanity normal again. And so it's an incredible game. I love it. I've been playing the game for the trophies, which we've done a whole episode about that, I think. But yeah, the trophies are awful. They're torture. Right. I just finished the grounded playthrough, which means there's no heads-up display. You don't know how many bullets are in your gun. You don't know how much health you have. So you don't know if you should use bandages or anything. It's insane. I love it.
I wonder what that is, though, of wanting to see the story again slightly better.
You described it perfectly. I think it's a perfect mix of nostalgia and comfort. I know that story. I know how it ends. I know all of the twists and turns, and I know all of the jump scares, and they still get me every single time. And I think there's a comfort in that, as opposed to branching out and playing something you don't know. And I don't know. Like I said, I played it on PlayStation 3. I'm playing the PlayStation 4 version, and I guarantee you I'll play the PlayStation 5 version eventually one day. But yeah, it's just one of those stories that I think needs to be experienced by everybody. Obviously, you said you don't like scary games. I think you would be terrified by this game. And the show as well. The show is amazing. If you haven't seen the show, I would recommend watching that as well. They did an incredible job on the show. I haven't seen season 2 yet. No spoilers. I also haven't played part 2, but yeah, I haven't played part 2, but I have played part 1 twice now. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't want to move on with the story. I just want to keep wallowing in the part 1 of the story.
You said something about cliche-ness too, but really, I mean, the fact that it is cliche means it's repeatable in a good way. I mean, the Arthurian story has been told a million times, and no one's tired of it yet. So I think that's good. Modern myth, I think about that a lot. Modern myth and mythos, and how video games kind of fall into that storytelling aspect. That is, it's still held up by writers in books and things today, but now we have another media, and it's the powerhouse right now, which is video games, and that's what this entire podcast is about. But I kind of went off on the rails there for a second. But there's another remake that I was playing on the Switch that got really bad reviews. It was sad to see it basically die again. Was the Advance Wars Reboot Camp game. And here's an example of maybe what not to do with a remaster in graphics, because you take kind of a big risk changing anything of a master game, when you change the visual aspect, or you change the sound effects even, or the music, or anything. You're taking a risk on whether or not people are going to like that you changed that. And Oblivion obviously it's kind of knocked it out of the park, right? They always change Argonians. They always change Khajiit. Argonian Khajiit players seem pretty happy with the changes once again. But the Reboot Camp people were upset about this game. And so Advanced Wars goes back to the graveyard, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. I think it's so difficult finding that balance of how much do we change versus how much do we leave the same. Anytime that you change something, we were talking about this before the recording started, where we were talking about mods and how we don't like it when people call something, like better grass or better rocks or better trees or whatever. They're not better, they're different. And so when you change something, you're making it different. You're changing the original vision of what the producer and the developers and the artists had for the game. And a lot of times those changes aren't better. So much of having a classic or something that is loved by the community, it's a fluke. It's 1,000 things coming together in such a strange way. I was talking about The Last of Us having a cliche story. The story doesn't matter. The game isn't about the story. It's about the characters. It's about the journey. It's about getting to the end. And so when you change that, when you make it different, you lose something. The spark is gone. Advanced Wars is a really good example of that. I remember it being a very charming game on Game Boy when I played it. Obviously, I haven't played the remaster. I can imagine if you change the charm of the game, well, then what do you have? I mean, essentially the game is two things. It's the world map, and then it's the action sequence where you zoom in on the two sides coming in together. Well, if you change that, then what is it? You've changed the formula of what the game is. And we always talk about gameplay loops and all of that stuff. I don't think people care about that. I think they care about, how they feel, how a game makes them connected with it. And so when you change that, it's different, and now it's new, and people don't like new. They like comfort.
I don't know if necessarily new equals bad is the correct thought process here, because it's not that it's new equals bad. It's the magic that created it is what was important. So the best example that we had that you and I talked about, that I was just flabbergasted that they left this in, but then I realized that that's part of the Oblivion experience. There's this line that's delivered. The player comes up to an elf character. She delivers the line, but the recording continues and is like, let me try that again. The voice actor you hear comes out of character. Let me try that again. And then re-delivers the line. And it's still in the game. And I think, like you said, with the charm, that's part of the charm, but it's everything that came together that made the game what it was. So when you change something, like you were saying, was what do you have left? It's something new. It's a new experience is what it is. The story, it can't be changed. The experience can't be changed. It needs to be experienced in the same way. But if you can make that experience new, but still capture exactly the same essence, which is like a lightning in a bottle, right? Like how do you capture that again? Well, I don't know how they did it. They did it though. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's the idea that I don't know if it's like pride or hubris or whatever it may be, thinking that you can make something better. And you absolutely can. There are instances where the remaster or the remake is better than the original. Absolutely. But I think there is an element of that. And I'm skipping way ahead here. I'm going way down the list to make this point. But there's a really interesting video on YouTube about the Silent Hill HD remaster that came out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Obviously, those games were PlayStation 1 titles and PlayStation 2 titles. And then they got remade, HD remakes. That should be good, right? Well, they made so many changes to these games that it almost became like a cult. I don't know what the opposite of like a cult classic is, like a cult hating, where even the developers of the original games, the original art directors and sound directors from the PlayStation 2 games were coming out and saying, they've ruined my game, they've ruined our game. And I think obviously that video is worth a watch if you got like an hour to sit down and watch people rant about old PlayStation 2 games. But just because something is different doesn't mean it's bad. But I think the opposite of that is also true, which is don't make changes for change's sake. If something's a classic, let it be a classic. Let it be something that's adored and loved by fans, and just give it to them again. Let them experience it again.
I think it's really important. I think that's really important. Hand me that old book. Hand me that old game.
As much as you hate the analogy I'm going to make here, it's the Star Wars analogy. Stop changing Star Wars. Just let people watch Star Wars. We don't need 35 different cuts. We don't need the Snyder cut for everything. Just let us watch the movie.
You're right. That made me mad, but I was muted. You're right, though. It's a good example because they try to remaster them, and then they change the original actor from the Anakin to the Christian Haydenson. Wow, I can't barely say his name. Amazing actor, by the way. I would never disparage the actors and the writers and the artists that worked on Star Wars. We'll get to the Star Wars rant another day. That's a different day for me to get angry. But as far as this topic, I just like to... There's always the same companies for me, the same games, the same things are going to keep coming about and come out of me. With Square Soft had originally made Final Fantasy Tactics. This is kind of an older remaster, but I feel like it's worth mentioning if we've not mentioned it before. But Final Fantasy Tactics, when that game came out, I just loved that game. I thought it was so good. And then they never did anything else with it aside from the Tactics Advance games. But that was a different story set in Ivalice. But not the same. It wasn't the same characters. It wasn't the same gameplay, really. It was a new take on it. And it was still good, but it just wasn't Final Fantasy Tactics. It's kind of like Mario RPG and Legend of the Seven Stars. That was made by Square back then. And then Nintendo took their own and tried to make their own Mario RPG, and they made Paper Mario, which I didn't really like. And then they made the Mario and Luigi games, which were awesome, but not Mario RPG, It just wasn't. So they made... For the PSP, Squaresoft, Square Enix now, made War of the Lions for the PSP. And it was a remaster, I guess, for the PSP. And they finally added in Dark Knight, which you could only play with Gafgarian in your team, which I can't remember the name of his. Fell Knight, I believe, was the name of the class for him. Still one of my favorite characters. Just like him. Anyway, they made this game, and it was amazing. Well, I mean, damn, they've never brought it anywhere else. I think it's on ISO. We were talking about that before the podcast, and I'm just like, man, we gotta we gotta talk about and tell people about these games. Maybe they know. They probably know. Maybe. You were talking about, if you've got an hour to listen to people talk about old PS1, PS2 games, that's us. They're here.
You're right.
They're listening.
You're not wrong.
If they're listening to us, then they're probably already watched that. By the way, you need to send me that video.
It is incredible. It's worth watching. It's very fun. But you're right. And, I think I've got a list here, and I don't really want to go into any kind of in-depth on any of these games. I've played all of them, and I think this is kind of where I get to kind of like the dark side and why I have the stance that I do have, which is play the original if you can. And if not, go ahead. I own a PlayStation 5. I saved up, I got it, and I was so excited when I got it. I've had every generation of PlayStation game, PlayStation console. When I got the PlayStation 5, there was just a lot of hype. You couldn't get one for a really long time because of 2020 and all of the production issues that came with that. And I finally got one, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. I want to start playing PlayStation games again. I'd been a PC gamer for a long time. I was ready. I was ready to be a console gamer again. I wanted to experience that switch. I played the system, and I realized almost every single game was just a remaster of PlayStation 4 games. And one of the things that Sony is notorious for, they did not have backwards compatibility on the PlayStation 4. And so what they did instead was they just remastered all of those games and turned them into PS4 games. And so a lot of what Sony has in its catalog are remakes, remasters, and ports and all of that stuff. And so I was very disappointed in the fact that the remakes require, like you said, artists and developers and people who are passionate about the game, but it requires a studio to make the game. And so all of that work, all of that time and energy and effort goes into remaking a game instead of making a new game, instead of making a sequel or making something entirely new. And so I think I'm glad that these are available for people to have if they had not played them previously. But, like the Uncharted games, there's 5 of them. The Uncharted Remastered series, which is 1, 2, and 3, and then the Legacy of Thieves, which is 4 and 5. Those are great games. Those are incredible games, but they're PlayStation 3 games. And, similar with The Last of Us, it's a PlayStation 3 game. So I'm sitting here on the PlayStation 5 playing a game that I already own, it's a room away on the PlayStation 3. And I'm like, wow, the graphics are incredible. It looks amazing, but I've played this game 3 times now. And so I don't want to play Uncharted 3 anymore. I want to play a new Uncharted. I want to play a new The Last of Us. And so that's kind of where my disdain for remakes comes from, is PlayStation has very notoriously resold you games that you already own rather than make new games.
That's such a interesting topic to me because of how much there's this back and forth of no emulation and no, they're not going to re-release these games and or then they do, and then we're like mad because all they did was re-release games forever. Well, we've been demanding it. They're like, but you demanded it. Well, yeah, yes, we did, but not like that. There's a right way to do these kind of things, but we don't really know what the right way is. Everything about gaming is still new territory. Gaming is still quite young. If you consider me young, then gaming is young. Unless you consider me old, then gaming's old. Then fuck you. No.
No, you're exactly right. I have a very confusing stance on this, and I understand that. I want these things to be available for somebody who has never played them. I want them to be there. I want them to experience these games. The games that I'm talking about are incredible games. I mean, these are the best that PlayStation has to offer. It's literally the poster boy of HD PlayStation. If Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Lara Croft and those were the poster boys back then, these are the poster boys now. Of course they should be remade. Of course they should. But I think where the frustration comes in, it's like it's the Skyrim conundrum where, okay, you've released Skyrim for the 5th time. Where's the Elder Scrolls 6? I'm ready for something new. I don't want to play the same game again. And so for me, it's frustrating in the sense that these games aren't for me. They're for someone else. And I respect that. I understand that. I still play them, like I said. But, you're taking your A team, your best studio, and you're essentially relegating them to PlayStation 3 remakes. And so and in some sense, I'm a little frustrated because it's like, yes, I want to replay these games. I love replaying old games. I love retro gaming. I love classic games. I love that. But I don't want that to be the only option. I don't want to live in the past to the extent that there's no future for gaming. I don't want there to be no future for PlayStation. And it's just replaying the same games over and over and over and over and over again. But yeah, I understand. You can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And so if I had to choose, I'm fine with this. I'm fine with there being 5 Uncharted remakes, 4 Last of Us remakes, Ghost of Tsushima being remade, Death Stranding being remade. I'm fine with that. Marvel Spider-Man being remade, Days Gone being remade. I'm fine with that. Those are classic PlayStation PlayStation experiences that I want people to have, whether that's on PC or PlayStation 5, whatever it may be. I want that to happen. So if I have to suffer a little bit, I'm fine with that.
Where's Elder Scrolls 6? Here's Oblivion 4. Elder Scrolls 4. Just replay that. Yes, we will. Thank you. I don't know. There's it's a really big topic there, I think, with remakes and remaking something over and over, and PlayStation is kind of bad about that right now. But I mean, with the success of Elder Scrolls 5, can you blame them? People are gonna buy it again for the umpteenth time, just like I will buy Dragon Quest 3 2D 3D remake at some point. That game's been remade about 100 times. Let's see, it was on the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, and then it was on probably, I want to say it was on the PlayStation. I know it was on the Game Boy Color. They've remade that game. It was on the phone, and then they re-released it on the Switch and everything else, and I'll rebuy that a billion times. I'm an old man. But like you said, you don't want to live in the past. New gamers are coming up, and they've got different tastes than us, and it's interesting to talk to younger gamers and listen to what their tastes are. I'm like, well, you should play this old game. And they're like, get that out of my... And then Oblivion 4 comes out. They're like, oh, this is a good time. Wow, you had a good time, Grandpa. You're right. Now get on my lawn and play these old games. I don't know. We kind of veered around here, but we were talking about Last of Us, and I really wanted you to bring up Dead Space remake, because it's in the same vein as Resident Evil 4 remake. My friend John got me this game, not knowing how I've changed over the years, moved far away from scary games. I am so affected by them now. I don't know why, but I can play that game for about 20 minutes, and then I have to save and turn it off. Even though I pretty much know that game like the back of my hand. I played Dead Space 1 a bazillion times, but there's something about it with like the graphics that it's just so intense, So I haven't been able to give it a really good, like, oh yeah, it was a good remaster. This is a definitive way to play Dead Space 1. It probably is. I've made it like an hour and a half into the game. I'll be like, there's going to be an ambush right here. There's one that's here, and as soon as I start shooting them, that's what makes the other one spawn directly behind you. Okay, all right, I know it's going to... And then I'm like, the whole time. I got to get it off. I'm going to have a coronary. So, yeah.
Well, I'll jump in here because I think this is a really good example of making changes alongside just bringing it up to standard graphics. I think the original Dead Space is one of my favorite horror games of all time, and that's including Resident Evil, that's including, Silent Hill, all of that stuff. This is the first game that I ever tried to get a platinum trophy on PlayStation 3, and I think the original Dead Space is truly one of the greatest games of all time, and it absolutely deserves a remake, deserves a remaster, whatever you want to call it. However, with the asterisk, they added in a voiced protagonist. So the original game was a voiceless protagonist. You play as a engineer, and you have the suit on, and so for the entire first game, you don't speak. People talk to you, but you don't return dialogue. And in the remake and remaster, they've added in the voice actor from 2 and 3. And so in some aspects, I love the changes that they've made. They've added new sections in, kind of fixed the story a little bit, because there is a part about halfway through the game that's a little confusing, as far as pacing goes, and they kind of fixed that. So I think it's 9 out of 10 better than the original game was. However, I don't like that they added in a voice protagonist yet. I like what they did in 2. I like the change that they made in 2. But I think it was important in the first game for him to be silent, because Dead Space 1 is the main character's mind breaking. It's him succumbing to the I believe they're called necromorphs. He's succumbing to the disease. And so it's important for him to be a silent protagonist so that it doesn't give away, the change when it happens. And unfortunately, they have a voice protagonist, and you could very clearly tell, it makes the ending much more obvious, I think.
See, you've just stepped on a landmine.
Oh.
The landmine is I feel like it's a very strong, line in the sand of how people think about protagonists and them being voiced or silent. This is a point of contention, I would say, even in Zelda, but it definitely was something that came up in Metroid Other M. They voiced Samus in that game.
Interesting.
And this is a whole topic that you could dive into. So you having a strong feeling about, it's so obvious that, it probably wasn't obvious to a lot of people that he was succumbing to that psychosis and whatnot. But just the entirety of the idea of whether or not he should be voiced or not, that's got to be a whole argument. I bet you there's somebody out there like, I think he should have been voiced the whole time. And then somebody, no voices, make it like the original, So I feel like that's a can of worms, but that's definitely I think a good opinion of yours. I like it. I like that you feel that way about it. I never really had any kind of feeling one way or the other, whether or not he was voiced or not. The whole voice or no voice topic in general with RPGs, does that draw you in as this is a question to everyone, to anyone listening. Do you prefer your protagonist voiced or not? It's like Baldur's Gate 3. The main character is not really voiced at all. I don't know if he should have been or not, or she should have been or not. Mass Effect, you are voiced. Is that the right choice? I don't know. That's why I think that's a big point of contention in gaming in general. Where is it? Some people don't like the word maybe, but immersion. Where is the immersion line? Where does it need to be? I don't know. But I like that.
Yeah, I think the split, the divisiveness of it is, are you trying to tell a story to me? And this is the story. There is no gray area. I'm telling you a story. This is the character. This is how they feel. This is what they are. Or are you trying to let me be the player, be the character? Are you trying to let me fill in the blanks and I'm filling in the story as if it were me? And I think that's where Dead Space 1, and I obviously there's other games too. Fallout 4 very famously had a voiced protagonist, and that kind of threw people off. But again, you're not playing as some unnamed vault dweller. You're playing as Nate and Nora. You're playing as a character. They let you change the name if you want, but you're playing a character that the game has provided to you. These are story beats that are happening to you. You're responding the way that I want you to respond. Whereas in the original Dead Space, it's psychological horror. You are meant to fill in your own blanks where, am I going crazy? Am I Isaac Clarke? Am I his inner monologue? Am I him? Is he me? Whereas when it's a voice protagonist, no, it's not. It's Isaac Clarke. I'm responding the way he is telling me to respond. And so it's just a different direction. It's a different choice, one that I disagree with.
Well, and again, this is where it comes into the media itself, because gaming is not what you said, as far as it is not a sit back and watch. It's not a movie. You are interacting with it. You are interfacing with it. It's the ultimate art form, because it's something that you always, as an artist, you want people to interface and have a conversation and be a part of your piece. Well, you are when you're holding the controller and directly controlling the character. So you are role playing as Isaac. You are Isaac, regardless of whether or not he's voiced or not. You are him when you're holding the controller. But whether or not how that story is told, I don't know. Either way, it's always both. It's always both with video games. You're always a considered piece of the media, because you are supposed to respond one way, but longtime GM, and you are as well, know that players are unpredictable.
Absolutely. Well, and like I said, I think absolutely the voice is fine. There's nothing wrong with the voice actor. And in Dead Space 2, I enjoy the fact that it's voiced, because that game is not meant to be psychological horror. It's action horror. It's the Resident Evil 4 of Dead Space. So that's fine. I'm fine with that being a voiced protagonist. I think it adds production value and makes the game much more approachable. And, whether we like it or not, I think people think things about, well, why isn't the protagonist voiced? Well, it's probably a money thing. I don't know. You're right. I mean, I think another part of it too is the decision to make it a third-person game instead of a first-person game. For me, that makes it much more like real, if that makes sense, because I can see Isaac. I can see what's happening to him. I know, if I don't turn fast enough, I'm going to get hit, because I can see it. I can see him getting hit. That's different than, there's a much more visceral reaction than it is in first person. I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, like we said before, 1,000 things have to come together in this perfect, almost random cacophony. The word that you like, cacophony of majesty. And that's what Dead Space was. It was this random thing that blew up out of nowhere, and I loved it. And they changed it. And that's fine. I'm fine with them changing it.
Yeah, well, the whole point of this entire episode was whether or not, well, not whether or not, but remasters and remakes. And then we dove into the topics of how we feel about. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think personally, don't change a damn thing.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you've been playing through, slight spoilers here, but you've been playing through Final Fantasy VII, and it's a constant battle of, do you change things, or do you let things, change things with mods, or do you let things stay the same? And I don't think there is a right answer. I think you can have both. That's what gaming is to me. That's why PC gaming is as popular as it is. You can have both. Make it whatever you want. It's your game. You are the player. You get to be in control of that. And like you said, it's D&D. The DM can give you the story, but you're the one that's playing it. It's your game. It's your experience. It's your memories. So make it your own. Make it whatever you want.
I would love to leave our viewers with you and I's favorite, because we've kind of wheedled our way into this, and I've just realized it, that we've walked ourselves down this lane that we always walk to, and it's the person's personal headcanon topic. How we always would say that. So basically, so and so dies at the end. Well, I don't like that, so he doesn't. And I don't care. I don't care if it's canon that that person is dead. I don't care. I don't like it. This is how I think it ended, and that's how it ended. And like you said, maybe put all your own mods. This is your version of the game that you're playing now. Make your own mod and then change the game into what you want. I think the main thing there is, the canon is the original artist's intent, and I think that's important to know. But yeah, definitely. I say we'll leave the viewers with that. If you have any parting words there, we're definitely at time.
No, I was getting ready to go on another rant again, so I think it's good that we're cutting off here.
Oh, I would love to hear the next part of that rant, which we probably will dive into next time. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Today. Good evening.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, see you.